Before you were born, what were you? Not where were you, but what were you? It is a strange question, is it not? Because when we think about ourselves, we usually think about this moment right now, this consciousness, this feeling of being you. But there was a time when you were not here. So what happened? Where did you come from? And more puzzling still, what were the atoms that make up your body doing before they became you? Let us think about this carefully. Right now, you are made of atoms, trillions and trillions of them. Carbon atoms, hydrogen atoms, oxygen atoms, nitrogen atoms, all arranged in the most spectacular way to make cells. And those cells arranged to make tissues. And those tissues arranged to make you. But those atoms, they are old, very old, much older than you. So where were they before they became part of you? Some of those atoms were in the food your mother ate when you were growing inside her. An apple, perhaps, a piece of bread, a glass of water. Those atoms were in that apple. And before that, they were in the tree. And before that, they were in the soil, and in the air, and in the rain. You see, atoms do not disappear. They just move around. They get recycled over and over and over again. Now, here is something remarkable. The carbon atom in your hand right now, that very atom, might have once been part of a dinosaur. I am serious. Think about it. That dinosaur died millions of years ago, and its body decomposed, and the atoms went into the soil, and then into plants, and then into other animals, and eventually, after an impossibly long journey, one of those atoms ended up in the food your mother ate, and then it became part of you. You are made in part from dinosaurs. Is that not wonderful? But let us go back even further. Before that atom was in a dinosaur, where was it? Well, it might have been in the ocean, dissolved in the water, or in the atmosphere, floating around as carbon dioxide, or in a rock sitting still for millions of years. Atoms are patient. They have all the time in the world. They do not care whether they are part of a rock or part of you. They just exist, following the laws of physics, moving from one place to another. Now let us think about this more deeply. If the atoms that make you have been around for billions of years, and they have been part of countless other things, then in what sense are you really you? What makes you different from a rock or a tree or a dinosaur? It is not the atoms themselves, because those atoms are the same. A carbon atom is a carbon atom, whether it is in a diamond or in your brain. The difference is the arrangement. It is the pattern. You are a pattern, a temporary pattern. The atoms come together in a very specific way, and that pattern is you. But it is not permanent. The atoms are constantly being replaced. Every time you eat, you are bringing in new atoms. Every time you breathe out, you are losing atoms. In fact, almost every atom in your body right now will be replaced within a few years. The skin you had 7 years ago, gone. Completely different atoms now. Your bones take a bit longer, maybe 10 years, but they too are constantly rebuilding themselves, atom by atom. You are like a flame on a candle. The flame looks the same from one moment to the next, but the actual molecules that are burning, the ones that are glowing and giving off light, those are different molecules every fraction of a second. New wax melts, moves up the wick, vaporizes and burns. The old molecules fly away as carbon dioxide and water vapor, but the flame, the pattern, persists. You are that flame. You are not the stuff. You are the pattern that the stuff makes. Or think of a whirlpool in a river. The whirlpool stays in the same place, spinning, looking like a thing, a solid object almost. But the water molecules in the whirlpool are not the same from 1 second to the next. New water flows in, gets caught in the spinning motion, and then flows out again. The whirlpool is not made of any particular water. It is made of the motion, the pattern. And when the conditions change, when the river slows down or speeds up, the whirlpool disappears. The pattern is gone. But the water is still there, flowing downstream, ready to make new patterns somewhere else. So before you were born, those atoms existed, but the pattern did not. The pattern is the new thing. The pattern is what we call life. And here is the truly astonishing part. That pattern, that arrangement of atoms, is so precise, so incredibly organized, that it can do something no rock or puddle of water can do. It can think. It can feel. It can look up at the stars and wonder where it came from. It can ask questions about itself. It can even ask what it was before it existed. Let us think about how this pattern began. You started as a single cell, one cell, smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. That cell was formed when a sperm cell from your father joined with an egg cell from your mother. And in that moment, there was a new combination of information, a new set of instructions written in a molecule called deoxyribonucleic acid, or as we call it, DNA. That DNA contained the blueprint for building you. It told the atoms how to arrange themselves. It said, put a carbon here, put an oxygen there, fold this protein this way, build a nerve cell, build a heart cell, keep going, keep building. Now that single cell started to divide. One cell became two, two became four, four became eight, and so on, doubling over and over again. But here is the clever part. As the cells divided, they did not all become the same. The DNA in each cell is the same, yes, but different genes get turned on and off in different cells. Some cells become skin cells, some become nerve cells, some become muscle cells. The same instructions, but read differently, like playing different songs from the same sheet music by choosing which notes to emphasize. And all of this happens automatically. Nobody is directing it. There is no little person inside deciding where to put the heart or how to wire the brain. It just happens, following the instructions in the DNA, following the laws of chemistry and physics. Atoms bumping into each other, sticking together in certain ways, building proteins, building structures. And somehow, out of all this mindless chemistry, a baby grows. A thinking, feeling, conscious being emerges from atoms that individually have no consciousness at all. How does that happen? We do not fully know. It is one of the great mysteries. But where did that DNA come from? Half of it came from your father and half from your mother. And their DNA came from their parents. And so on, back and back and back, through thousands of generations, through millions of years of evolution, all the way back to the very first living things on Earth. You are connected through an unbroken chain of DNA to every ancestor you have ever had, all the way back to single-celled organisms that lived in the ancient oceans billions of years ago. Think about that for a moment. There has never been a break in that chain. Every one of your ancestors, going back millions of years, survived long enough to reproduce. If even one of them had died before having children, you would not be here. You are the product of an unbroken line of survivors stretching back through deep time. Every single one of them faced predators, disease, starvation, climate change, and somehow made it. And they passed their DNA forward, generation after generation, until it reached you. And that DNA itself has been changing slowly over millions of years. Random mutations happen. Sometimes they are harmful, and the organism dies. Sometimes they are helpful, and the organism survives better, has more offspring, and passes on that mutation. This is natural selection. This is evolution. And over enormous stretches of time, these tiny changes add up. A fish develops lungs and can live on land. A reptile develops feathers and can fly. A mammal develops a bigger brain and can think abstractly, all from small changes in the DNA, tested by survival, refined over millions of years. So, in a sense, before you were born, you were not completely nothing. You were a possibility. You were a potential pattern waiting to happen. The atoms were already there, scattered all over the earth, in the air, in the water, in the food chain. The information was already there, carried in the DNA of your parents and their parents, going back to the beginning of life itself. All that was needed was for these things to come together in just the right way at just the right time. And they did. And here you are. Now let us think about the atoms themselves, where they came from originally. Not just where they were last year or 1,000,000 years ago, but where they came from in the very beginning. This is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. The atoms in your body were not made on Earth. They were made in stars. Yes, stars. You see, when the universe began, about 14 billion years ago, there were no atoms like the ones in your body. There was only the simplest atom, hydrogen, and a little bit of helium. That is it. No carbon, no oxygen, no nitrogen, no iron, no calcium, none of the elements that make up life. So where did those elements come from? They were created inside stars through a process called nuclear fusion. Inside a star, the temperature is about 15 million degrees at the core. The pressure is enormous, millions of times the pressure at the surface of the Earth. Under those conditions, hydrogen atoms are squeezed together so hard that they fuse to make helium, and this releases energy, enormous amounts of energy. That is what makes the stars shine. That is what makes the sun shine. It is a giant nuclear fusion reactor, fusing hydrogen into helium every second of every day, converting about 4 million tons of matter into pure energy every single second. But the star does not stop there. When it runs out of hydrogen in the core, it starts fusing helium into carbon, and then carbon into oxygen, and oxygen into neon, and neon into magnesium, and so on, building up heavier and heavier elements, layer by layer, like an onion. Each layer is fusing lighter elements into heavier ones, releasing energy, keeping the star alive. This happens over millions of years, each stage taking less time than the one before. A star might fuse hydrogen for 10 million years, but fuse silicon for only a few days. This process continues until the star starts making iron. And here is where something interesting happens. Iron is different. When you fuse elements lighter than iron, you get energy out. But when you try to fuse iron into something heavier, you have to put energy in. It does not work. The star cannot get energy from fusing iron, so the fusion stops. The core of the star is now made of iron, and it is no longer producing energy. And then, disaster. Without the energy from fusion pushing outward, there is nothing to hold the star up against its own gravity. The core collapses. In less than a second, a core the size of the Earth, containing more mass than our entire sun, collapses down to a ball about 20 kilometers across. The atoms themselves are crushed. Electrons are forced into protons, turning them into neutrons. The core becomes so dense that a teaspoon of it would weigh 1 billion tons. And then it bounces. The outer layers of the star come crashing down onto this incredibly dense core, and they bounce back outward in the most violent explosion in the universe, a supernova. For a few weeks, this single exploding star shines brighter than an entire galaxy of 100 billion stars. If a supernova happened within a few light years of Earth, it would be bright enough to read by at night, and it would be visible during the day. In that explosion, which lasts only a few seconds, more energy is released than the star produced in its entire lifetime. And in that brief moment of unimaginable heat and pressure, the heavier elements are made. Gold, silver, uranium, all the elements heavier than iron. They are made in supernova explosions. They cannot be made any other way. So every atom of gold in a wedding ring, every atom of silver in a coin, every atom of uranium in a nuclear reactor was created in the heart of an exploding star. And here is the beautiful part. That explosion throws all those atoms out into space. They travel through the galaxy at thousands of kilometers per second, spreading out, mixing with clouds of gas and dust. And eventually, some of those atoms encounter a cloud that is collapsing under its own gravity to form a new star. And around that new star, some of the atoms clump together to form planets, rocky planets like Earth. Our sun is one of those second-generation stars. It formed about 4.5 billion years ago from a cloud of gas and dust that contained the remnants of earlier stars that had exploded long before. The Earth formed at the same time from the same cloud, and everything on Earth, every rock, every ocean, every living thing is made from the ashes of those ancient stars. We are literally the remnants of stellar explosions. So before you were born, before you were even a possibility, the atoms that make up your body were inside a star. They were forged in the nuclear furnace at the heart of a star, and then scattered across the galaxy in a supernova explosion. You are made of stardust, literally. Every atom of calcium in your bones, every atom of iron in your blood, every atom of carbon in your cells was created in a star that died before the Earth even existed. When you look up at the night sky, you are looking at your ancestors. The stars made you. Now let us think about what this means. It means that you are not separate from the universe. You are not some independent thing that was placed here. You are part of it. You are the universe, rearranged. The same atoms that make up distant galaxies, the same atoms that make up the sun, are the atoms that make up you. The universe has arranged itself in such a way that part of it can think about itself, and that part is you. Think about the journey those atoms have taken. They started in the Big Bang 14 billion years ago. They spent billions of years as hydrogen gas drifting through space. Then they fell into a star and spent millions of years being fused into heavier elements. Then the star exploded and they were thrown out into space again. They drifted for millions more years until they fell into the cloud that became our solar system. They became part of the Earth. They cycled through rocks, through water, through air, through living things. They were in bacteria, in algae, in fish, in dinosaurs, in trees, in animals. And finally, after 4.5 billion years of traveling, they became part of you. But there is something even more peculiar to consider. Before those atoms were in a star, what were they? Well, in the very early universe, right after the Big Bang, there were no atoms at all. It was too hot. The temperature was trillions of degrees. At that temperature, atoms cannot exist. They would be torn apart immediately. So instead, there were only fundamental particles, quarks and electrons, flying around in a hot, dense soup of energy. As the universe expanded, it cooled down, and after about 1 second, it was cool enough for quarks to stick together to form protons and neutrons. But it was still too hot for atoms. The electrons were moving too fast. They could not be captured by the protons. So for the next 380,000 years, the universe was just a hot fog of protons, neutrons, and electrons, all bouncing around, with light scattering off the electrons, unable to travel very far. The universe was opaque, like being inside a cloud. And then, after 380,000 years, the universe cooled down enough for the electrons to be captured by the protons. The first atoms formed, hydrogen atoms mostly, some helium, and suddenly the light could travel freely. The fog cleared. This is the light we see today as the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is the afterglow of the Big Bang, the light from the moment when atoms first formed. We can detect this light with radio telescopes. It comes from every direction in the sky. It is the oldest light in the universe, and it tells us what the universe was like when it was only 380,000 years old. So if we go back far enough, before you were born, you were not even atoms. You were quarks and electrons. You were fundamental particles. And if we go back even further, to the very first moments after the Big Bang, you were not even particles. You were energy. Pure energy. In the beginning, everything that exists now, all the matter and energy in the entire universe, was compressed into an incredibly tiny, incredibly hot point. We do not know how small. We do not know exactly what it was. But we know that it was smaller than an atom and hotter than anything we can imagine. And then, for reasons we do not fully understand, it exploded. It expanded. And as it expanded, it cooled. And as it cooled, energy turned into particles. This is possible because of Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared. Energy and mass are the same thing, just in different forms. Energy can turn into matter, and matter can turn into energy, and particles turned into atoms, and atoms turned into stars, and stars turned into planets, and on at least one of those planets, atoms arranged themselves into molecules, and molecules arranged themselves into cells, and cells arranged themselves into living things, and living things evolved, generation after generation, for billions of years, until some of them could think and wonder about where they came from. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are a pattern of atoms that can think and feel and wonder, and the atoms that make up that pattern have been on an unimaginable journey. They have traveled through space and time for 14 billion years, from the Big Bang, through the hearts of stars, across the vastness of space, into the Earth, through the oceans, through the atmosphere, through the food chain, into plants, into animals, into your mother, and finally into you. Before you were born, you were stardust, waiting. You were energy, waiting. You were a possibility written in the DNA of your ancestors, waiting for the right conditions, the right moment, the right combination of atoms to come together. And now, for this brief moment in the history of the universe, you are here. You are alive. You are conscious. You are thinking about where you came from. You are asking questions. You are looking up at the stars, at the very stars that made you, and you are wondering. And one day the pattern will dissolve. The atoms will move on. They will become part of the air, the soil, the ocean. They will be taken up by plants, by animals, by other living things. They will continue their journey. Some of them might even become part of another conscious being, billions of years from now, who will also look up at the stars and wonder. But right now, they are you. They are arranged in this incredibly complex, beautiful, temporary pattern that can think and feel and love and wonder. And that is extraordinary. That is the miracle. Not that you are made of special stuff, but that ordinary stuff, the same stuff that makes up rocks and stars and galaxies, can be arranged in such a way that it becomes conscious, that it becomes you. You are the way the universe knows itself. You are matter and energy, organized in such a way that you can ask where you came from. And the answer is everywhere. You came from the stars, from the Big Bang, from the whole history of the universe. You are not in the universe. You are the universe. A small piece of it, temporarily aware, briefly conscious, asking questions, seeking answers, marveling at the improbability and beauty of it all.